All right, today we are doing volumes of prisms and cylinders. So you're going to find the volume of the prism on your cylinder kind of in a similar way we found like the surface areas before this. So we're going to skip this last think one since we're not in class and can't really talk about it. So definition of volume. Volume is a space occupied by a 3D shape. So like how much space does something take up? Like how much space is this coffee cup filling up would be the volume of it. Like how much can you pour into something and like fill that up? So the space occupied by a 3D shape. A note here, volume is always measured in cubic units because you're going to have three dimensions. You have like length times width and height. So you get three different units. So you get three different measurements, so cubic units. So you're going to have things like centimeters cubed for your units. I don't have an example for this because we're going to get a bunch on the next chunk when we do prisms. So the volume of a prism is going to be your base area times whatever the height is. So here BA is your base area and H is your height. So over here we have a prism, there's our base. Again, your bases have to be parallel for prisms. You have to have two top and bottom that are exactly the same. So even if your shape is like turned or something, you always want the two that are parallel as your bases. Here our base is a square, or sorry, a rectangle. So your area is going to be base times height, or 5 times 3. Again, your base area changes depending on what your shape is. So if we want the volume, we want our base area of 5 times 3 times the height of the whole shape, so times 4, which will end up giving you 60 feet cubed. And again, you want the cubic units because you have 3 different measurements. So you can try this one on your own, and then we'll check it. So here the base is right here, because we still have another one parallel on top. Since these are rectangular and there's lots of parallel sides, you could pick like this and this to be your base. That'd still be fine because they're both parallel. But the base area here is going to be 24 times 20, and the height is 10. So if you're finding the volume, you do 24 times 20 for your base area, and then times 10 to get 4,800 centimeters cubed as your volume. All right, so I have a triangular prism. This one's a little bit different. So here, it would be tempting to say this is the base. That's not correct because there's no like parallel base at the top. So that can't be your base. The base is going to be this triangle because we have another triangle that's parallel to it. So they're parallel like this. So even if it's not up and down, you want the two that are parallel together. So the base area here is a triangle. So 1/2 times the base times the height, and that's your base area. So if we're finding our volume, you want to do our base area, so 1/2 times 6 times 10, and then times the height here, which is going to be the measurement you haven't used. So it's a little weird, but the height is going to be the 5 in this case. So this is our height, because technically if we turn this, you'd have like a triangle and then up like this, and your height would be right there, which would be 5. So times 5. And you should end up getting 150 meters cubed for that volume. So volume of a cylinder, same idea. We want the base area times the height, but since it's a cylinder, the base area formula is always going to be the same. So it's going to be pi times the radius squared times height. So this is your base area. Here, r is your radius again. So over on this one, if we said our height was 6 and the radius was 3, you could then type it in here, your volume pi times 3 squared times 6. And then again, you can leave this in terms of pi or as a decimal. So in terms of pi, you would take 3 squared times 6, which would give you 54 pi. Let's say our unit is inches. Inches cubed would be one option, or type it all the way in and get 169.646 inches cubed. And again, it depends on what the question is asking you. So make sure you're looking on Math Excel to figure out what it's asking. Does it want it in terms of pi, or does it want it in terms of decimals? Where does it want it to be rounded to, etc. So one more example, go ahead and try this, and then we'll check. Here our height is 21. And then this is the diameter, so your radius is going to be half of that, or 8. So your volume is pi times 8 squared times your height of 21. Again, if you type just this chunk in, you'd get 1344 pi. And there's no units on this, so I'm not going to put units on here. Or you can type it into a calculator and get 4,222.301. And there you go. So your homework is the Math Excel for 11.4. This is your optional homework if you wanted to do that. But that's volumes of prisms and cylinders.